Every Sunday night, my own children would surround me in the living room. "This secret dies with us, old woman," the eldest would whisper while the others laughed. For 3 years, they waited for me to die so they could have my house. Little did they know I had a guardian angel watching through the window. Good afternoon, my dear friends. What a joy to talk with you today. My name is Martha Sullivan. I'm 78 years old, born in a small town in Vermont, and now living here in Portland, Oregon. I'm sitting on my porch where I can see the garden I planted with such care. The dahlias are starting to bloom, you know? This time of year they look so beautiful, with colors that brighten the day of anyone passing by my house. These days, my greatest pleasure is decorating spaces. Look at this embroidered pillow next to me, made by these calloused hands. I also enjoy rearranging furniture, moving pictures around, creating compositions with plants and antiques. My home is like a living museum that changes as my heart desires. Neighbors often stop by for coffee and to see what Miss Martha has come up with this time. I became interested in decoration when my late husband, Theodore, gave me a home decor magazine back in the 70s. Back then, having magazines like that was quite a luxury. I would spend hours admiring those spaces and thinking, one day my house will be like this, cozy and beautiful. And it was from those worn pages that this passion was born, one that stays with me to this day. The living room where I am now was entirely decorated by me. On the walls, I placed family photos, some macrame work I learned to make by watching videos online. Yes, this old lady knows how to use technology. And a large mirror I found at an antique store. They say old mirrors hold stories of those who've looked into them. If this mirror could speak, oh, the tales it would tell. And you, my dear viewers watching now, tell me in the comments, from which little town in America are you watching? And what time of day did you find this video? Sipping coffee in the morning, during your lunch break, or already tucked in bed? I always read all the comments and feel so happy knowing where you're from and when you set aside time to listen to this grandma's stories. Let me know, okay? Let's create a chain of kindness. Today, I'll share with you a story I've kept in my heart for a long time. A story about family, about pain, but also about hope and justice. Because, my dears, sometimes danger lives within our own home, coming from those who should protect us. But life has its mysterious ways of fixing things, and sometimes we're not as alone as we think. Let me grab my shawl as the afternoon starts to cool down, and I'll tell you how I discovered that a child's true love can be stronger than the greed of many. I was born in Vermont, as I mentioned, in a simple wooden house with clay roof tiles that let in a bit of rain during storms. My father, Harold, worked in the fields growing corn and wheat, while my mother, Olivia, took care of us and did sewing work on the side. There were 5 of us siblings, me, the youngest, my sister Zelda, and my 3 brothers, Douglas, Oliver, and Jerome. Days of hard work, but also of great unity. Our house was at the end of a dirt road. The roof, when it rained, made that little noise that still lulls me during sleepless nights. The floor was packed earth, smoothed by the straw broom that Mama swept with every blessed day. The walls were made of boards that left cracks where the wind came whistling through, bringing the smell of the wilderness, and in winter, a bone-chilling cold. My childhood was one of bare feet and busy hands. By 7, I was already helping Mama grind beans in the mortar, wash clothes at the creek's edge, and tend to chickens in the yard. While town girls played with porcelain dolls, I made mine from corn husks, decorating them with fabric scraps from my mother's sewing work. But don't misunderstand me. I was happy, very happy. The simple life teaches us to value what truly matters. School was far, about 3 miles of walking. I went with my brothers, always barefoot to save our only pair of shoes, kept for church days. At school, I learned to read with Mrs. Norma, a lady with hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that seemed to see into our souls. She was the one who gave me my first book, a book of poetry that I still keep as a treasure. On Sundays, after church, the whole family gathered under the big oak tree in our yard. Daddy played the guitar, Mama made cornbread with milk that was delicious, and we children ran and played until sunset. It was our sacred moment, you know. That time when we were simply happy together. My mother had a saying she always repeated, "Child, life is like embroidering cloth. It looks pretty on top, but underneath, the knots hold everything together." I only understood what that meant many years later, when life started showing me its tightest knots. When I turned 15, I met Theodore at a 4th of July dance. He was the son of Italian immigrants, worked in carpentry, and made the most beautiful furniture in the region. Tall, with green eyes and a shy smile, he won my heart as soon as he asked me to dance. "Girl with blackberry eyes," he called me, because he said my eyes were dark and bright like that fruit. We dated for 2 years, always with my father sitting on the porch, watching from a distance. In 1962, we married in a simple ceremony at the town's church. I was 17, he was 22. The following week, we moved to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where Theodore had gotten a job at a large carpentry workshop. It was hard leaving my family, but the heart goes where love calls, doesn't it? In Cedar Rapids, we started our life in a small rented house. With time and hard work, Theodore prospered. He opened his own carpentry workshop, and little by little, we built our big house, the one that would be the stage for so much joy, and later, so much pain. The years passed, and God blessed us with 6 sons: Oscar, Arnold, Arthur, Isaac, Aaron, and William, the youngest. I raised them all with much love, teaching the values I learned from my parents: honesty, hard work, and respect for others. While they were little, our house was full of laughter, childish quarrels, and the happy noise that only a large family knows how to make. William, my baby, was different from the others from a young age. While his brothers were rougher, liked to run, fight, and get into trouble, he was calm, enjoyed books, and had a sensitivity that reminded me so much of his father. "This boy wears his heart on his sleeve," Theodore would say proudly. He was the only one interested in his father's carpentry, spending hours learning the craft, while the others preferred business, commerce, quick money. Our house in Cedar Rapids was large and old, with a garden in the back where I planted my flowers and herbs. It had a porch that wrapped around the front, tall windows, and a spacious living room where we held our family gatherings on Sundays. It was in this house that I lived through the best and worst phases of my life. It was in this house that I watched my children grow, saw my Theodore leave this world, and learned that sometimes those who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. Time passed, the boys grew up, became men. But children don't always grow up as we dream, my dears. Sometimes, life takes paths we never imagined. And that's how I suddenly found myself alone in a house too big, with a broken heart, and surrounded by dangers I never imagined I'd have to face. The years went by too quickly. My children grew up, Theodore's carpentry business prospered, and our life in Cedar Rapids seemed like a dream I didn't deserve. It was so beautiful. But as they say, after the fair weather always comes the storm, and ours arrived quietly, without us noticing. In 2010, Theodore started feeling chest pains. At first he hid it, said it was just fatigue, age-related. We were already in our 60s after all. But one day, while sawing a mahogany board to make a double bed that had been ordered, he collapsed. William, who worked with his father in the carpentry shop, was the one who helped him. I'll never forget the expression on my youngest's face when he came running home, telling me to hurry, that his father had fallen ill. At the hospital, the diagnosis was harsh. Heart problems. "Mrs. Sullivan, your husband needs urgent surgery," said Dr. C. Guthrie, taking off his glasses and rubbing his tired eyes. It was 3 months of waiting for a spot at the hospital in Des Moines. 3 months of anguish, of seeing my Theodore wasting away day after day, growing paler, weaker. During this time, our 5 older sons, Oscar, Arnold, Arthur, Isaac, and Aaron, would come to visit, but never stayed long. They already had their lives, their businesses in neighboring towns. Only William remained by our side, taking over the workshop, caring for his father, helping me with the heavier tasks. "Mom, don't worry about money. I'm here," he would tell me, holding my wrinkled hands in his strong, calloused ones like his father's. I thanked God for having at least one son with his heart in the right place. Finally, we got the spot for surgery. Theodore was operated on, but his heart was already too damaged. He returned home different, more fragile, quieter. He started spending more time sitting on the porch, watching the street activity, the children playing, life going on without asking permission. It was during this time that I noticed a change in my other sons. They started visiting more, especially on Sundays. At first I thought they were worried about their father, that they had finally understood the importance of family. How wrong I was, my God. During one of these Sunday visits, Oscar, the eldest, sat next to his father on the porch. I was in the kitchen, making tea, when I heard the conversation. "Dad, have you thought about what you're going to do with the house and the workshop? It's not good to leave things unresolved, you know." The silence that followed those words was like a slap in my face. My son was talking about inheritance with his father still alive. I felt my legs weaken and had to hold on to the sink to keep from falling. Theodore, even weakened, didn't lose his firmness. "Son, when I'm gone, your mother will decide what to do. The house and everything we built is hers by right." The answer didn't please him. From then on, the visits from the older sons always had the same subject: the house, the workshop, the land, the saved money. Like vultures circling, waiting for the right moment to swoop in. William was the only one who never joined these conversations. On the contrary, he got irritated when his brothers brought up the subject. "Dad is still alive. Respect him," he would say, his eyes flashing. The tension between the brothers grew and grew. They could no longer be in the same environment without an argument breaking out. Theodore suffered with this. I could see in his eyes the disappointment with the children he had raised. On a rainy night in September 2013, my Theodore went to sleep, never to wake up again. He departed silently, as if not wanting to bother anyone. I found him in the morning, cold, with a serene expression, finally at peace. The wake was a difficult time. The 5 older sons maintained solemn expressions, received condolences, but I noticed their glances crossing, as if exchanging secret messages. William, on the other hand, was devastated. He was the only one who cried openly, unashamed of his pain. After the funeral, we all returned home. It was still raining. The gray skies seemed to share our sadness, or at least mine and William's. In the living room, Oscar cleared his throat and said what, I realized, had already been rehearsed. "Mom, we need to talk about Dad's house and business." How could it be? My husband had just been buried, and he already wanted to talk about assets. I looked at the other 4, who nodded in agreement. Only William stood up, indignant. "Dad isn't cold in his grave, and you already want to divide what's his? What kind of children are you?" Arnold, the second oldest, approached his youngest brother with a finger raised. "Shut up, William. You were always the favorite, the protected one. Now we also have a right to our share." "What share?" William shouted. "You never cared about Dad or Mom. You only show up here to ask for money or favors." What followed was a terrible argument. Words that should never be said between brothers were thrown like sharp stones. I tried to intervene, but my fragile voice was lost amid the shouting. The argument only escalated until Arthur, always the most violent, pushed William against the wall. "You're not better than anyone. If you think you'll get everything, you're very mistaken." The physical fight that followed was heartbreaking. My sons, whom I had cradled in my arms, whom I had nursed, taught to walk and talk, were now attacking each other like mortal enemies. William, even being younger and stronger, was outnumbered. 5 against 1. Amid the confusion, Isaac shouted something that froze my blood. "If you don't disappear from here, we'll finish you off. No one will miss you." It wasn't an empty threat. I saw in my older son's eyes something I had never seen before, a blind hatred, a greed that transformed them into people I no longer recognized. The fight ended with William bleeding, his nose broken, one eye bruised. He stood up with difficulty, looked at his brothers, then at me, and said the words that would haunt me for more than a decade. "I no longer have brothers. And you? You don't deserve to have a mother like her." He took only his wallet and motorcycle keys and went out the door into the pouring rain. That was the last time I saw him for many, many years. My youngest, my boy with the good heart, had disappeared into the dark night, driven away by the violence of his own brothers. And I, a recent widow, remained there amidst the shards of what once was a family, not knowing what would become of my life from then on, not imagining the hell that awaited me at the hands of my own sons. After William disappeared on that rainy night, life in the big house in Cedar Rapids turned into a nightmare. I was left alone, a 66-year-old widow, at the mercy of my own children. At first, they disguised their intentions well. They would visit me, ask if I needed anything, do shopping. Anyone who didn't know the situation might even think they were exemplary sons. But then, 2 weeks after Theodore's burial, Oscar appeared with some papers in hand. He was accompanied by the other 4 brothers. "Mom, I brought some documents for you to sign. It's to make things easier with the workshop, to avoid problems with the bank and taxes." I asked to read the papers, but Arnold, who worked in an accounting office, interrupted me. "You don't need to worry about this, Mom. They're just bureaucracies. You won't even understand these legal terms. It's better to trust us." Something inside me lit up a warning. Theodore had always taught me never to sign anything without reading it. I returned the papers and said firmly, "I'll take this to Mr. Jameson, your father's lawyer friend. After he explains it to me, I'll sign." It was like throwing water on a cat. Their reaction was immediate. Oscar snatched the papers from my hand. Arthur hit the table so hard that my teacup tipped over, spilling the hot liquid on the embroidered tablecloth. "You're not taking anything to any lawyer," shouted Isaac. "Either you sign now, or things will get difficult around here." That was the first moment I truly felt afraid of my own children. I saw in their eyes something a mother should never see, a calculating coldness, a cruel determination. They were the looks of strangers, not of the boys I had raised. "Get out of my house," I said, trying to keep my voice firm despite the tremor taking over my body. "Get out now!" They left, but Aaron, the 5th son, who had been quiet until then, stopped at the door and said something that still gives me chills when I remember. "You'll change your mind, Mom. Everyone does." I spent the whole night locked in my room with a chair propped against the door. For the first time, I felt afraid in my own home. The next day, I tried to call Mr. Jameson, but the phone was dead. When I went to check, the wire had been cut. That same week, their strategy began. Aaron showed up saying that since I was alone, he would live with me to keep me company. I had no way to refuse. He installed himself in what had been William's room and little by little took control of the house. In less than a month, I could no longer receive visitors. "It's for your safety, Mom. There are a lot of opportunists out there," he would say. My friends from church tried to visit me a few times, but he would send them away, saying I was resting or sick. The phone was never fixed. My communication with the outside world was cut off. Gradually, I became a prisoner in my own home. Aaron controlled the money, the shopping, even what I ate and when I ate. The other 4 would come regularly, always with more papers to sign. When I refused, the punishment was immediate. I would go without food or without the blood pressure medication I needed to take. Sometimes Aaron would forget to bring me food for an entire day. "You're getting forgetful, Mom. You're no longer of an age to take care of all these things," they would say when I complained. And so it was for months, me withering away, losing weight, losing the will to fight. I tried to escape twice, but Aaron had changed the locks and kept the keys with him. The front windows were sealed to keep out the cold, according to him. I was completely isolated. 1 year after Theodore's death, when I was almost giving up, I had an idea. I pretended to be resigned to the situation. I started signing some less important papers, always asking to read them first, so that they would lower their guard. The strategy worked. They began to relax, thinking they had broken me. I took advantage of this false sense of security to hide a letter with the neighbor. Mrs. Cooper, who lived next door, had always suspected something was wrong. One afternoon while Erin was at the market, I managed to pass a note under the fence, asking her to deliver it to the police. She promised to help. But my sons had eyes everywhere. Someone saw Mrs. Cooper going to the police station and warned Erin. When he returned, he was with a rage I had never seen before. He dragged me by the hair to the bedroom and locked me there for 3 days, without food, only with a little water. Mrs. Cooper was never seen again. I later learned that her children had taken her to another city for health treatment. I'm sure it was out of fear. That's when the Sunday ritual began. Every Sunday afternoon, all 5 would gather at my house. Oscar, Arnold, Arthur, Isaac, and Erin would sit in the living room, drinking coffee they made themselves. They never let me prepare anything, afraid I would put something in their drink. They would bring me to the living room, sit me in a chair in the center, and there would begin what they called a business meeting. It was systematic psychological torture. Each one, in turn, would tell me how ungrateful I was, how I was disrupting their lives, how William had run away because he couldn't stand to see me anymore, how Theodore had died of disappointment because of me. "Do you think that useless husband of yours left anything? It was our work that built all this," Arthur would often shout, pointing to the walls of the house. "If it weren't for us, you would be begging in the street." The words were like knives, each cutting deeper than the last. Sometimes it didn't stop at words. When I responded or tried to defend myself, Erin, who was the most violent, would come with a slipper in hand. "You need to learn to respect your children." The slipper would crack against my legs, my arms, my back. One day, when I tried to scream for help, Arthur put a cloth in my mouth while the others held my arms. The terror of those moments I will never forget. But the worst of all, what hurt me the most, was the end of those Sunday sessions. When they had had enough fun with my humiliation, Oscar, the oldest, would always lean towards me and whisper the same phrase with an icy smile, "This secret dies with us, old woman." And they would all laugh as if it were the funniest joke in the world, as if they were sharing an innocent prank, not the torture of their own mother. At night, after they left, I would drag myself to my room and cry silently, so that Erin wouldn't hear. I thought of William and wondered where my youngest was, if he was well, if he thought of me. I prayed, asking God to protect him, wherever he was. And in the depths of my heart, I wished he would never return. Not to see me in that degrading situation, not to fall into the clutches of the brothers who had already threatened his life once. The years passed like this: 2, 3, 5 years of continuous humiliation. I survived one day at a time, praying that my fragile body would finally give in and I could reunite with Theodore, far from that hell. In 2017, things worsened. I managed to overhear a conversation between Oscar and Erin on the porch. They were talking about selling the house and the workshop, which by this point was practically abandoned. Except there was a problem. Even with the papers I had signed, for a sale of that size, they needed my signature with a notary's acknowledgement. And they couldn't simply take me to a notary in the state I was in, malnourished, covered in marks, clearly mistreated. "The old woman won't last much longer," said Oscar. "Just wait." "We've waited too long," replied Erin. "Maybe it's time to speed things up." That conversation chilled me to the bone. I realized they were considering something that until then was just a threat, to finish me off once and for all. That's when I started pretending I was weaker than I really was. I would stop eating in the middle of meals, pretend to be dizzy, drop things. I wanted them to believe I really was at the end, so they would lower their guard. The strategy seemed to work. The Sunday meetings became less violent, not because they had become more human, but because they thought it was no longer worth wasting energy on someone who would soon no longer be there. But, as they say, hope is the last to die. And mine found new breath on the day when, cleaning the basement as ordered by Aaron, I found an old box of photographs. Among them, one caught my attention. Theodore, myself, and our 6 sons still as children, all smiling. I turned the photo over and saw a phone number noted in pencil. In handwriting I immediately recognized. It was William's. Could it still be the same number after so many years? Did my son still think of me? Or had he gone on with his life, leaving behind the painful memories? I kept that number in memory, repeating it mentally like a mantra, waiting for an opportunity. I didn't know when or how, but that number could be my only hope of salvation. And it was with this small flame of hope that I continued surviving, day after day, week after week, Sunday after Sunday, always hearing the same terrible phrase at the end of each torture session. "This secret dies with us, old woman." They didn't know, but I held within me the certainty that this secret would not die with me. Not while there was a thread of hope, not while William was somewhere, alive, perhaps thinking of the mother he had left behind. That phone number found on the back of the photo became my anchor, my thread of hope. The challenge was to find a way to use a phone without my jailers noticing. Aaron rarely left the house, and when he did, took his cell phone with him. The landline remained disconnected, a constant reminder of my isolation. For months, I observed the house routine with renewed attention. I had noticed that on Tuesdays, Aaron would go out to meet his brothers at Quincy's bar, where they discussed their business. It was the only time I was left alone, but he always locked doors and windows before leaving. On one of these Tuesdays, in January 2018, I observed something that gave me an idea. It was unbearably hot, and before leaving, Aaron opened a small bathroom window for ventilation, a window so narrow that not even a child could pass through it, but large enough for what I was planning. I waited for him to leave and ran to the phone of the new neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, who had moved into the house where Mrs. Cooper used to live. I observed her through the curtain crack, always careful and kind with everyone. I wrote a short note. "Please lend me your cell phone for 5 minutes. It's a matter of life and death. Pass it through the bathroom window. I am imprisoned by my own children. Martha, your neighbor." I folded the paper several times until forming a small ball, and gathering all my strength, threw it through the bathroom window. By a miracle, the paper fell exactly on Mrs. Ellis's clothesline among the hanging clothes. The hours that followed were pure agony. What if she didn't see the note? What if she didn't believe it? What if she told Aaron? Worse, what if the number was no longer William's? In the late afternoon, almost giving up hope, I heard a soft whistle coming from the bathroom window. I ran as silently as I could, and there was Mrs. Ellis, her eyes full of concern, extending her cell phone through the small opening. "5 minutes," she whispered. "I'll be waiting here." With trembling hands, I dialed the number I had memorized. 1, 2, 3 rings. No one answered. My heart tightened. On the 4th ring, a male voice answered, a voice that, even after so many years, I immediately recognized. "Hello? William?" My voice came out choked, almost inaudible. Silence on the other end. Then a deep sigh. "Mom, is that you?" Tears came in a cascade. It was him. My son was alive. "Son, listen to me carefully. I don't have much time." I spoke quickly. "I'm trapped in the house. Your brothers. They mistreat me. They want everything. They're planning—" I couldn't finish. The emotion was too strong. The words choked. "Mom, calm down. I already know everything." That phrase caught me by surprise. "What do you mean?" "I never really went away," he explained. "I stayed in Marion, less than an hour from there. I always kept in touch with some acquaintances who told me how you were. I knew something was wrong, but I had no proof, and they are 5 against 1. Why didn't you come back? The question escaped before I could contain it. Because they would kill me, Mom. You heard what they said that night. And then what would happen to you? I needed to find another way. I heard the distant sound of a car. Aaron could be returning. I don't have much time. What do we do now? I have a plan, said William, with a firmness that reminded me of his father. I've already spoken with the police here, but they said they need evidence, a flagrant. Listen carefully. He quickly explained what we should do. It was risky, but possible. The next Sunday would be the perfect opportunity when all 5 would be gathered for their usual session. Can you hold on until Sunday, Mom? I've endured for more than 4 years, son. I can endure a few more days. Sunday, then. I'll be outside, at the big living room window, at 4 in the afternoon. When Oscar says that phrase, I know which one, my informants told me, you look at the window and say, look who's at the window, just that. I returned the cell phone to Mrs. Ellis, thanking her with my eyes, unable to express in words the gratitude I felt. She squeezed my hand through the window and said, I'll pray for you, Mrs. Sullivan. The next few days were the longest of my life. Each hour dragged, each tasteless meal, each humiliating order from Aaron. Everything was bearable now because there was an end in sight. I maintained my routine, continued pretending weakness and submission, while inside a flame of hope grew. On Saturday night, I could barely sleep. What if William didn't come? What if the plan didn't work? What if my other sons found out? I prayed all night, asking for strength to face what was coming. Sunday dawned clear, a beautiful summer day. Around noon, the cars began to arrive. First Oscar, then Arnold, followed by Arthur, and lastly, Isaac. Aaron received them on the porch, all laughing and talking loudly, like old friends gathering for a barbecue. Only I knew the true purpose of that meeting. At 3:30, as usual, Aaron came to get me from the room. Get ready, old woman. The boys want to talk. I put on my best dress, a simple garment worn by time, but still dignified. I combed my white hair that hadn't seen a beauty salon in years. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror of the room, and, for the first time in a long time, I didn't just see a victim. I saw a survivor, a woman who, despite everything, had not been broken. I was taken to the living room where the 5 were already seated, drinking beer and discussing money, as always. When I entered, the conversation ceased. Oscar pointed to the chair in the center of the room, the same chair where I was humiliated Sunday after Sunday. The meeting began as always. Accusations, insults, veiled threats. I felt time drag. Was it 4 o'clock yet? Was William out there, waiting? Or was it all just a cruel illusion created by my desperate mind? When I couldn't take it anymore, Oscar stood up, approached me and leaned over me, as he always did at the end of the session. His breath of beer and cigarettes nauseated me. I think you finally understood your place, didn't you? It's almost time to sign those notary papers. The house will be sold, whether you want it or not. I kept my gaze fixed on the window behind him. The curtains were closed, but a slight breeze moved them gently. Nothing to say? Better that way. Just listen to me well, he continued, lowering his voice even more to the threatening whisper I knew so well. This secret dies with us, old woman. The other 4 laughed, as they always did. It was the moment I had been waiting for. With a courage I didn't know I still possessed, I raised my eyes to Oscar, and with a clear and firm voice, a voice I hadn't used in years, said, Look who's at the window. At first they didn't react. Oscar even smiled, thinking it was some kind of delusion on my part. But then, Arnold, who was facing the window, looked in the direction I was pointing. His expression changed instantly, his face paling as if he had seen a ghost. What is it? Asked Arthur, also turning. One by one they turned to the window. The thin curtains now revealed a silhouette, the silhouette of a man observing the scene from outside. Not just any man. It was William, whom they thought was dead or disappeared forever. "It can't be," muttered Isaac, standing up abruptly. Aaron was the first to react. He ran to the window and opened the curtains violently. There was my youngest, looking at them with a serious and determined expression that reminded me so much of his father. And he wasn't alone. By his side, 2 uniformed police officers observed the scene inside the house. "What does this mean?" shouted Oscar, advancing towards me with clenched fists. At that moment, the front door opened with a bang. More police officers entered, followed by William. One of the officers, who seemed to be the commander, spoke in a loud and authoritative voice. "Everyone stay where you are. We have a report of false imprisonment and mistreatment against Mrs. Martha Sullivan." My older sons were paralyzed, looking at each other in panic. "There's someone here," whispered Arnold, as if it wasn't obvious. "It's my son William," I replied, with a confidence I hadn't felt in years. "And he's not alone." The officers advanced, handcuffing my older sons one by one. They protested, shouted, threatened lawsuits, said I was crazy, that I had made it all up. But the evidence was there: my skeletal body, the marks of aggression, the locks on the outside of doors, the nailed windows. William approached and hugged me carefully, as if I were made of porcelain that could break at any touch. And in a way, that's how I felt. "It's over, Mom," he whispered. "You're safe now." That was, at the same time, the worst and best day of my life. The worst because I had to face the fact that 5 of my sons, whom I had carried in my womb and raised with love, had become monsters capable of torturing their own mother. The best because after almost 5 years of hell, I was finally free. As the police took my sons outside, I realized that despite everything, a part of me still loved them. It was a painful love, a mother's love that never completely extinguishes, even in the face of the worst betrayals. But at that moment, the relief of liberation was stronger than any other feeling. William led me out of that house, which, from a loving home, had transformed into a prison. In the garden, I breathed deeply the pure afternoon air, feeling the sun on my face for the first time in so long. It was like being born again. "Where do we go now?" I asked, unsure about what the future held for a 71-year-old woman who had lost almost everything. "To my house, in Portland," replied William with a gentle smile. "Oregon is beautiful, Mom. You'll love starting a new life there." At that moment, I realized the nightmare was really over, and that, despite all I had lost, I still had the most important thing: a son with a good heart, like his father. A son who never abandoned me, even when it seemed like he had. A son who patiently planned to rescue me when everything seemed lost. I looked one last time at the big house in Cedar Rapids, where so many stories, good and bad, had unfolded. Then, leaning on William's strong arm, I walked toward the car that would take me to a new life. A life in which this secret would not die with us. On the contrary, it would be proof that justice, even though it may be delayed, always finds its way. The journey to Portland was long and silent. William drove concentratedly, while I observed the landscape through the window, watching Iowa fade into the distance. It was strange to leave the state where I had lived most of my life, but each mile traveled gave me a feeling of lightness, as if I were leaving behind not just a place, but all the weight of painful memories. We arrived at night. William's house was small and simple, but welcoming. 2 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, a living room with comfortable sofas, and what enchanted me most, a backyard garden full of flowers and herbs. On the porch, there was a wooden rocking chair that reminded me so much of those Theodore made in his workshop. "It was the first thing I built when I moved here," explained William, noticing my gaze. "I made it just like Dad used to make them, so I would never forget." That night, for the first time in years, I slept without fear. The room my son had prepared for me had a soft bed, clean sheets that smelled of fabric softener, and a large window, without locks, without padlocks, that faced the garden. Despite the fatigue, I took time to fall asleep. It was strange not having to stay alert at every noise, not needing to lock the door, not fearing the dawn. The first days in Portland were of adaptation. My body, weakened by years of mistreatment, needed to regain strength. William insisted I be examined by doctors. Dr. Diana, a geriatric physician with a gentle look, was horrified at my condition. "You have severe malnutrition, anemia, high blood pressure not properly treated, and signs of post-traumatic stress," she said, holding my wrinkled hands. "But we'll take care of all of this. You are strong, Mrs. Sullivan. You survived the worst." I began treatment with blood pressure medication, vitamins, and a special diet to regain weight. I was also referred to Dr. Zoe, a psychologist who specialized in trauma. At first, it was difficult to talk about what I had gone through. The words got stuck in my throat, the tears came without warning. But gradually, session after session, I was able to release all the stored pain. William proved to be an even more dedicated son than I remembered. He worked as a carpenter in a furniture factory during the day, but every morning he prepared my breakfast before leaving and called several times to check if I was okay. At night, we would have dinner together, and he would tell me about his life in the years we were separated. "I never got married, Mom," he confessed one night. "I couldn't think about starting a family knowing you were suffering. I had to resolve that first." I then learned that in the almost 5 years since he had left home on that rainy night, William had never really disappeared. First, he went to Marion, where he got a job in a carpentry shop. From there, he maintained contact with some neighbors and acquaintances in Cedar Rapids, who gave him news about me. Always bad news. "I tried to come back a few times," he told me, "but Aaron had spread the word that I had stolen money from Dad before running away. Some even believed it, and the 5 together were too dangerous for me to face alone." That's why he began to plan. He went to the police in Marion, but without concrete evidence of the abuse, he couldn't get immediate help. He saved money, documented what he could through neighbors' accounts, and waited for the right opportunity. "When you called that day, it was like a miracle," he said, with tears in his eyes. "I was almost giving up, thinking maybe it was too late." Meanwhile, the legal process against my 5 older sons followed its course. I was called to testify, to tell in detail the years of abuse. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in life. Looking into their eyes, now handcuffed and wearing prison uniforms, and reporting each humiliation, each Sunday of terror, each threat. They denied everything, of course. They said I was senile, that I was making up stories, that William had manipulated me to get the inheritance. But the evidence was abundant: my physical state, the testimonies of neighbors, the locks on the outside of doors, the nailed windows, the cut phone. And there were also the papers they had forced me to sign, transferring assets and money to their names. The trial lasted months. It was news in the local papers, which called the case the Cedar Rapids House of Horrors. I felt ashamed when I went to the court sessions and saw people looking at me, some with pity, others with morbid curiosity. But Dr. Zoe always reminded me, "The shame is not yours, Mrs. Sullivan. You are the victim, not the guilty one." Finally, in December 2018, the sentence came. All 5 were convicted of false imprisonment, elder abuse, domestic violence, fraud, and criminal association. Sentences that varied from 12 to 15 years in prison, depending on each one's degree of participation. The house and workshop in Cedar Rapids, which they had tried to take, were legally guaranteed as mine. "What do you want to do with the house?" asked the lawyer who represented us, Mr. Oliver. I thought long and hard. That house held precious memories of when Theodore was alive and our children were still innocent children. But it also held the horror of recent years. Each room, each piece of furniture would remind me of what I went through. "I want to sell it," I finally decided, "and donate half the money to an institution that cares for elderly victims of violence. The rest will be to ensure my livelihood and William's future, the only son who honored his father's name." So it was done. The house was sold for a good value, which allowed us to live comfortably. William was able to leave his job at the factory and open his own carpentry shop in Portland, fulfilling the dream he shared with his father. As for me, recovery was slow but steady. The body responded well to treatments, and gradually I regained the weight, the color in my face, the sparkle in my eyes. The mind took longer. Nightmares came frequently. I would often wake up screaming, thinking I was back in that chair in the center of the room. William would come running, calm me down, stay by my side until I fell back asleep. In sessions with Dr. Zoe, I learned techniques to deal with the trauma, to not let the past contaminate my present. One of the things that helped me most was finding a purpose, something that gave me pleasure and made me feel useful again. That's how I rediscovered my passion for decoration. It started with small changes to my room. A colorful pillow here, a flower vase there. William noticed my interest and encouraged me. "Why don't you decorate the entire house your way? You can change whatever you want." That invitation opened a world of possibilities. I began researching in magazines, then on internet sites. Yes, I learned to use the computer with William's help. I discovered I had a special eye for colors and arrangements, for transforming simple environments into welcoming spaces. The house was transformed little by little. We painted the walls in soft tones, changed the curtains for light fabrics that let the light in, bought plants to give life to the corners. Each change was discussed between us two. Each new object was carefully chosen. When we finished our house, William's friends who came to visit were impressed with the transformation. A neighbor asked if I could give her some ideas for her living room. Then, another asked for help with her teenage son's bedroom. Soon, without me realizing it, I was giving small decoration consultations for people in the neighborhood. "You should charge for this," William said one day, seeing me drawing a project for Mrs. Olson's house, a widow who lived down the street. "No, son, I don't do it for money. I do it because each environment I transform is like I'm also transforming myself inside. Each new color I choose is a dark stain from the past that is erased." But the idea kept growing. In 2020, when the pandemic arrived and we all spent more time at home, people began to value their spaces even more. The demand for my consultations increased. I created a small Instagram profile with the help of Mrs. Olson's son, where I showed the before and after of the environments I decorated. To my surprise, the profile grew quickly. Grandma Martha's decorations became known in Portland. I didn't charge much. Sometimes I even accepted payments in products like homemade sweets or crochet work. The important thing was the satisfaction of seeing the smiles when people saw their homes transformed, more beautiful, more cozy. In one of these projects, I met Dorothy, a 75-year-old lady who wanted to redecorate her living room to receive her grandchildren for Christmas. While we talked about colors and furniture, she told me that she had also gone through difficult situations with her family. "Not all children know how to honor their parents in old age," she said, with a look that showed she understood my pain without me having to explain. Dorothy became a dear friend, and through her, I met other ladies from the community. We formed a small group that met once a week to have tea, exchange recipes, and mainly share stories. There, among equals, I could speak openly about my past without fear of judgments. And I discovered I wasn't alone. Others also carried invisible scars of abuse and abandonment. Together, we decided to create a larger project, an official support group for elderly victims of family violence. With the help of the Portland Senior Center and the support of volunteer professionals like Dr. Zoe, the group grew and became a safe space where people like me could find shelter and guidance. Meanwhile, the years in prison were transforming my other sons in different ways. Oscar and Arthur, the most aggressive ones, never showed remorse. Aaron and Isaac, after 2 years incarcerated, wrote letters asking for forgiveness, but I felt they were more motivated by the hope of a reduced sentence than genuine remorse. Only Arnold seemed truly sorry. His letters were long, detailed, full of childhood memories and recognition of the evil he had done. I only responded to Arnold's letter. It was difficult to find the right words, the balance between forgiveness and justice. I wrote, erased, rewrote several times with Dr. Zoe's support. In the end, the message was simple. I forgave him as a mother, but that didn't mean forgetting or accepting what he had done. He needed to serve his sentence, and perhaps in the future, when he was truly regenerated, we could try to rebuild some kind of relationship. This decision to forgive, even with reservations, was liberating. I realized that hatred only kept me tied to the past, while forgiveness, not for their benefit, but for my own well-being, allowed me to move forward. And so, day after day, year after year, I rebuilt my life in Portland. The house that I decorated with William became a true home, full of light, colors, and peace. My work with decoration, even modest, gave me purpose and joy. The support group grew, helping other people find their voice and their strength. In 2022, I received news that shook me. Arnold, after 4 years of exemplary prison behavior, had achieved progression to the semi-open regime. He wrote to me, asking if he could visit me when he had authorization to leave temporarily. I consulted William, consulted Dr. Zoe, and mainly, I listened to my heart. I decided that yes, I would receive Arnold. Not in our house, I wasn't ready for that yet, but in a public place, a cafe in downtown Portland. William insisted on being present, not out of distrust of his brother, but to give me emotional support. The reunion happened on a sunny spring day. Arnold was thinner, his hair graying, his eyes carrying the weight of guilt and remorse. When he saw me, he cried like a child. We didn't hug. That gesture still seemed too intimate, but we shook hands. It was a beginning, small, fragile, but a beginning. "Thank you for receiving me, Mom," he said, his voice choked. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to redeem myself." We talked for almost 2 hours. He told me about life in prison, about the carpentry course he was taking, a tribute to his father, he said, and about his plans for when he was definitively released. I talked about my new life, about decoration, about the support group. William, initially tense, gradually relaxed, even sharing some stories about the carpentry shop. When we said goodbye, I felt a mixture of emotions. Sadness for what could have been, relief for having managed to face this moment, and a small, shy hope that, perhaps, one of my lost sons could find his way back. I returned home that day with a renewed certainty. Life, even after the greatest traumas, always offers chances to start over. The secret is having the courage to accept them, one day at a time. And that's how, at 75, I found myself completely transformed. From the broken woman who arrived in Portland in 2018, almost without hope, emerged a new Martha. Strong, resilient, able to help others and to find beauty even in the most unlikely places. As my mother, Olivia, used to say, "As long as there's life, there's time to bloom." Today, my life in Portland is so different from those dark years that sometimes I wonder if it wasn't all a nightmare. My routine begins early. Old habits never die. At 6 in the morning, I'm already up, preparing a cup of coffee to drink on the porch while watching the sunrise painting the sky pink and gold. Our house, once so simple, now reflects everything I've learned about decoration. Each corner has a meaning, a story. In the living room, we keep only one piece from Cedar Rapids, the rocking chair that Theodore made when William was born. Fully restored, it now symbolizes not the painful past, but the continuity of the talent and love that transcended generations. William lives with me, but has his own space at the back of the property, a small house he built with his own hands. His carpentry shop prospers, specializing in handcrafted furniture that resembles his father's style, but with a modern touch that attracts customers from all over the region. He is still single, but a few months ago, he started dating Rebecca, an art teacher from the local school. When I see them together on Sunday, sharing the lunch I prepare with such care, my heart fills with a joy I thought I would never feel again. Grandma Martha's decorations has gone from being just a hobby to becoming my mission. Twice a week, I receive clients in a small office we set up in the converted garage. They are mainly elderly people who, like me, seek to bring more light and life to their homes. I don't charge much. Some pay with homemade cakes or handcrafts. The important thing is the exchange, the feeling of usefulness, of contributing to others' happiness. You transformed my house into a place where I want to spend my last decades, Mr. Anderson, an 82-year-old widower, told me after I completely changed his dark, depressing living room into a space full of colors and family memories. On Wednesdays, the elderly support group meets at the community center. From victim, I became a counselor. I share my story without shame, showing my emotional scars as medals of survival. If I manage to get out of that hell and rebuild my life at 71, you can too, I always say. And I see in those people's eyes the same flame of hope that William once rekindled in mine. Last year, I was invited to give a talk during Elder Awareness Week. I trembled from head to toe when I went on stage. But when I started speaking, the words flowed like spring water. I told about the abuse, about the rescue, about the reconstruction. At the end, the entire room was standing, applauding with tears in their eyes. A young social worker came to hug me. "Your story saved my grandmother," she said. After hearing your account on the radio, she finally had the courage to report the son who was mistreating her. As for my other sons, life followed its inevitable courses. Oscar and Arthur remain in prison, refusing to acknowledge their mistakes. Aaron passed away last year from a heart attack in the penitentiary. Isaac is serving his sentence in a semi-open regime and tries occasional contact through letters, which I respond to with polite but distant words. Arnold is the only one with whom I maintain a relationship in reconstruction. After completing 6 years of his sentence, he got parole and moved to Salem, a city near Portland. He works as a carpenter, a trade he learned in prison, and visits us once a month. The relationship with William is still tense, but there is respect. Between the lines of this family reunion, I see the transformative power of genuine repentance and conscious forgiveness. The house I decorate with such care reflects my restored soul. On the walls, colorful paintings replaced the shadows of the past. Pillows embroidered by my own hands bring comfort to the sofas, where I receive friends for coffee. In the backyard garden, I cultivate herbs and flowers, each symbolizing a phase of life. The resistant rosemary like my youth, the roses that bloom even after the harshest winter, the lavenders that bring peace after the storm. In my bedroom, the most special of environments, an entire wall is covered with photos. Some old ones from when Theodore was alive and the family was still united. Others recent, showing my new life in Portland. William at the inauguration of his carpentry shop, me receiving a certificate of honor from the City Hall for my work with the elderly, our Sunday lunches with friends who became family. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I look at these photos in the soft light of the lamp and realize how many lives fit into a single existence. How many Marthas have inhabited this body? The girl from Vermont, the young wife in Cedar Rapids, the proud mother, the imprisoned widow, and now, finally, the decorator grandma from Portland, free and at peace. The marks of the past never completely disappear. I still have occasional nightmares where I hear that terrible phrase, "This secret dies with us, old woman." I still get startled by sudden noises. I still have days when sadness visits me without warning. But I've learned that these shadows don't define who I am. They are just part of my story, not its final chapter. As I tell the ladies in the support group, our wrinkles and scars are not marks of weakness, but maps that show the paths of our strength. Today, at 78, sitting on the porch of my house in Portland, watching the garden I planted bloom, listening to William work in the workshop in the back, I feel a deep gratitude for the second chance life gave me. It's not a perfect existence, none is, but it's mine. A life rebuilt brick by brick, color by color, dream by dream. And when people ask me what's the secret to moving forward after so much suffering, I answer with the words that became my motto. Life is like decorating a house after a fire. You can't save everything, but you can build something new and beautiful with what remained. My dear ones, who have accompanied me this far on this journey of pain and rebirth, I want to leave you not just a story, but a beacon of hope for those who still live in the shadows of fear. I've learned that age doesn't define our strength, but rather our ability to start anew each day. When I found myself trapped in that house at 67, I thought my life was over. But at 71, I was reborn. And today, at 78, I bloom as I never imagined possible. The walls that imprison us aren't always made of bricks. Sometimes they're built by those who should protect us. If you're surrounded by walls of abuse, know that there's a window somewhere, a window through which freedom can enter, as it entered my life on that decisive Sunday. My wrinkles are maps of survival. Each one tells a story of pain overcome. When I decorate a house, I'm actually decorating souls, showing that dark environments can be transformed, just like our lives. I discovered that my voice, even trembling, has power when I decide to use it. For years I remained silent, suffocated by fear and shame. Today, this same voice that barely whispered in Cedar Rapids echoes in lectures and support groups, touching hearts and saving lives. Life has taught me that even in the deepest darkness, our inner light never goes out. Even when my sons turned off the house lights to terrorize me, there was an inextinguishable flame within me, the same one William saw through the window, and that kept me alive until the rescue. I never allowed my dignity to be stolen, even when they tried to take everything from me. They could control my body, but my spirit remained free, planning, waiting, believing in better days. If you know someone who is going through what I went through, don't look away. Often, all an elderly person in an abusive situation needs is someone who believes, who sees beyond the facade of normality that abusive families build. Seek help. In every city, there are agencies for elder protection, specialized police departments, support groups. There is no shame in asking for help. The shame should be on the abuser, not on the one who suffers. To the sons and daughters who care for their elderly parents with love and respect, you are like my William, angels who honor the sacrifice of those who gave you life. Know that there is a special blessing reserved for those who water the roots of their own tree. And to you who are trapped in a situation that seems hopeless, hearing that this secret dies with us, I say, dark secrets cannot withstand the light of day. Expose them, even if your voice trembles, even if it seems impossible, even if no one believes at first. Truth has its own power, and sooner or later finds its way. Believe in the dawn, even during the longest night. I waited almost 5 years for mine. It was worth every minute of waiting when I saw my youngest's face in that window, bringing with him justice and freedom. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to receive more stories of overcoming that can help save lives. Each subscription is a shout against the silence that protects abusers. And leave in the comments the word window. Those who watched until here will understand the meaning. It will be our secret code, a reminder that, as in my story, salvation sometimes appears when we look at the right place at the right time. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it teaches us to live with them and still smile. Today, when I decorate a house, transforming dark spaces into homes full of light, I am actually retelling my own story, that of an old house in Cedar Rapids where terror reigned, transformed into a loving home in Portland, where life flourishes in every corner. Do this now. Don't wait another minute. Because while we're talking here, someone is living the nightmare I lived, waiting for a friendly hand to open the window that leads to freedom. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from.